So find the enemy, make sure they don't find you, and then using different methods of softening them up first and then killing blows. So, basics of Nebulous Fleet Command. This is assuming you know how to do the specific controls in terms of, right-clicking to target. Right-clicking is your action menu. M and stuff is your movement, and all that kind of stuff. So if you wanted the basic movement stuff, do the tutorial. This is more of the strategy side. So we're going to be going over the basic strategy of how to win in a general game. Basic ship types, mainly for ANS and OSP, and their use case. What is E-War and scouting? Everyone always says E-War, figure out what that means. The basics of that in 2 seconds is you need to see the enemy to shoot it. How do you find them? And then specific components plus ship strategies. Short-range weapons in combat. This is what a typical short-range engagement looks like. Long-range weapons in combat, same thing, but for long range. PD, soft kill, and hard kill. This is a very hotly debated topic. But we're going to hopefully go over it in enough detail to help you make sure you don't die quickly to missile spam. And just as a note, this was built in conjunction with me, Dargaribdus, who leads the Coliseum, which is the largest Nebulous fan community. It's a competitive group mainly focusing on vanilla, but they also do a little bit of modded stuff as well. And yeah, so let's get into it. So, basic strategy is you want to find the enemy before they find you. In a small note, this is kind of a sub-sim, or it's very similar to a spaceship sub-sim, where you need to be sneaky and find the enemy before they find you. So this is using scouting and radar. And let me tab over to Nebulous right here. So these are your basic ones in the Halo mod, which are essentially Alliance ones. So you have an Illuminator, which is good for using guiding semi-active missiles. It also can help boost the target's radar signature, so if you want to do any scouting, you can do that as well. We have our specific one here in the mod, which is a Beacon Twin Illuminator. It can be mounted, on some smaller stuff as well. Then you have a Floodlight Illuminator, which is a kind of a wider, high power cone. And it's a similar, actually I think this is a smaller cone, sorry. But either way, all these illuminators is guiding missiles and making the target brighter on radar. Then you go into your jammers. This one right here is going to be it's a 360 around the warship, so it's like a small bubble almost around the ship for jamming. Helps, kind of fight off close range missiles, stuff like that, disrupting radar. These two are going to be directional jammers, which will help jam comms, and yeah, this one's the comm jammer. And this blanket is going to be the radar jammer. So blanket jammer is the one that a lot of people use, where you'll see if someone hits you with it, you're going to lose your specific tracks, and you're also going to see a bunch of ghost tracks. That's where you see, the yellow and gray and red fake tracks all over your screen for a little bit. Hang-up jammer is going to not allow you to communicate with other vessels in your fleet. So it's going to be preventing you from receiving any other comms from the rest of your ships in the fleet. However, like it says here, it does not prevent sending data, only receiving. So that is the very, very basics of those jamming and scouting. Let me go back to this for scouting real quick. The biggest sensors, at least for the Halo mod, are going to be the Panard and the Bullseye. So Panard is going to be a passive tracker, which sends you that purple, somewhat vague directional detector long range. So you'll only really see the bearing of the target. You don't know the distance, but if you get 2 or 3 of these, and they can triangulate the position of stuff at very, very, very far away. So if you use this on a scout ship, it's good to kind of just get a general idea of where the enemy is, or if you use, again, 2 or 3, then you can start to triangulate at very long distances, which is super handy. Bullseye is going to be a lock, which is great for cannons and for max. So this is going to allow you to, guide your command-guided weapons really effectively, including missiles as well. And it's just a fire control locking radar. So it allows you to lock targets. It doesn't really do much in terms of scouting for you, but it does help in terms of locking those targets. If we go down to the these sections in here, you will see you have, these are your other passive radars. So you have your parallax, frontline, and spyglass. Parallax is going to be long distance, but obviously a lot more power as well, and gives off a bigger radar signature for yourself. But this goes to right here, max range, 9.5 kilometers. Frontline is going to be 8 kilometers, a little bit weaker. There's a bunch of other side stats, but I'm going over the very, very basics. And then Spyglass is really long range, but at a cost of a lot more power and signature. So, yeah. Let's go back to here. Softening up their defenses is going to be jamming, cannons, rails, and plasma in vanilla. And then striking a killing blow is going to be missile volleys, heavy cannons, and sustained medium cannon fire over time. Now we're going to go to, actually, let me go back to this real quick. So questions on the basics of the strategy. So find the enemy, make sure they don't find you, and then, using different methods of softening them up first and then killing blows. Questions on that?
Quick question. You mentioned that the E70 was for radar.
Sorry, I want one of the jamming mounts. Yeah. This one, the blanket is for radar and the hang-up is for comms.
No, the E70.
Oh, this one's directional. Sorry, this is communications. I think I said radar. Yes, I did. I apologize. This is for communications. I apologize. Good catch. Good catch.
Okay. And I forgot, you mentioned that the floodlight was great for counter radar, right? I mean, counter jamming.
No, this is good for illuminating a target. So it's going to be illuminating targets and better guiding some semi-active missiles. So it'll light up the target, make it brighter, which it can help when you're jammed because it'll make that target more consistent. But yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. So again, this, when you get into a match, excuse me one second. All right, when you get into a match, this is the basics of combat. So when you're confused, trying to figure out what to do, find the enemy, soften them up with cannons, rails, jamming, and then sometimes even, S1 missiles as well will help soften them up, and then do a killing blow. Okay, basic ship types. This is going to be mainly referencing Alliance vessels and unsc vessels. However, this will also work in loosely conjunction to URF and OSP and some other mods. Generally across the board, mods try to be vanilla adjacent or similar to vanilla. And so if you get the basics of these down, you'll find that, oh, this is a, if you hop into another mod, you'll see, oh, this is kind of like a light cruiser. This is a heavy frigate or a light frigate. So this is the general strategy for that. So corvettes and very small ships. In this case, this would be like the Sprinter Corvette in vanilla, or the Gladius in UNSC. Fast scout ship and E-war ship, packing in a few missiles, or fighting off other scouts with cannons. Generally speaking, this is what the corvettes are best at. If you play in some weird strategies, you can, corvette swarm and have a ton of missiles, or in the case of the Gladius, you can have a lot of daggers, so if you get close enough, you can actually do some decent damage to larger vessels, but as a general rule of thumb, they're best for scouting E-war and capping points in control and fighting off other scouts. Frigates, light modular ships, generally speaking, advanced E-war, scouting, missile carrier, or small, very light cannon dueler. I think most people use them as missile carriers and scouts in E-war. Because they're essentially, you can build it out to be a super good corvette in terms of like they're being fast. You can mount a couple more modules on them. You can get fire control locks and just kind of have a beefier radar system set up. Destroyers, really good as cannon brawlers. So in my mind, the difference between Cannon Dueler and Cannon Brawler, Cannon Dueler is you are on equal ground and you want to kind of shoot a bit and then back off. Cannon Brawler is you can get up close and personal and push people back. So destroyers are great at that, generally speaking. Um, they can also be very versatile in terms of rails and then scouting and E-war and missiles. So they're just a very versatile, a little more expensive and heavier duty version of the frigates. Now, light cruisers, they're bigger, not a ton of armor, but generally they're really good at punching down at smaller vessels with cannons or lots of missiles. You can also have it kind of be, some people use them as command and control to be E-war scouting as well as some support in terms of weaponry. And that's kind of, there's a lot of people that prefer the light cruiser builds. Heavy cruisers, just like it says, battlefield controller. It's a really good command cruiser. Some people use them as missile buckets, where you can kind of just sit back in the background and launch long-range missiles and have a lot of them in that case. Or you can get up close and personal with cannons and do some really heavy brawling and push people back off of points, or just decimate other heavy or small ships. Battleships, this is going to be stuff like the Thanatos or the Solomon, where you're going to be a damage sponge and power hitter. So you essentially do everything that heavy cruiser can do and more. Better armor, larger weapon slots, lots of armor. You can load up on DC teams as well, get them back in the fight. Really hard to kill compared to other ships. That being said, generally, if you bring a battleship to a fight, a lot of people will consider that as a primary target. And we'll try to get you out on that. So that is the general overlay of all of these. Questions on that? Great. So we did a little bit of E-War and scouting, but we're going to recap this. So again, seeing your enemy and preventing your enemy from seeing you. So when you load into a match, the first thing you try to do is find your enemy and see where they are. So you'll send off your scout ships, top, bottom, side, whatever, and try to get a track on the enemy groups. Most of the time, what you'll end up finding first is the enemy scouts, which is why you kind of want to have your scouts either protected with an escort or packing a little punch, because if you can take out their scout, then there's less of a chance they're going to find you, and you can find first, get the first shots off, and have the advantage. So that is the big bonus of the scouting game. It's going to be finding the enemy scout and finding the enemy group first. Then radar vessels are going to be good. Radar vessels and scouts are related but distinct. In that case, we're talking about scouts are quick, fast, moving in and out, looking at stuff, throwing a few shots out, retreating. Radar vessels are kind of going to be your command and control vessels in terms of having a lot of intelligence, analysis index, or a parallax, something that can be good sitting in your fleet to give your entire fleet intelligence and radar signatures. Scout vessels, again, cap points, kill other scouts, move in and out really quickly. Radar vessels are kind of your fleet anchors, and stick with the main bulk or near the main bulk of your fleet to give them consistent tracking and imagery. So E-war jamming vessels are similar to scouts and radar vessels, where you're going to stay at a distance. So you could have a sprinter corvette be a scout, and you could also have a sprinter corvette be a jamming one. The scout's going to go cap points and get up close and personal. The jamming sprinter corvette is going to be sitting at a distance and jamming. And then if they get engaged, they're going to retreat. They're not, generally speaking, they don't have enough power to do multiple things when you get to the jamming, because it's pretty power hungry. So you're going to want to sit back, jam, and avoid engaging as much as possible. So jamming, which we'll go over more in detail in terms of defeating missiles. You can jam the host to disrupt command-guided missiles. You can also jam the direction of the missiles to confuse tracking in terms of, you can click on a specific missile in a volley, and if you're far enough away, you can try to jam that entire cone and volley of missiles as best as you can, depending if you're jamming on their right frequency. Questions on that recap? Okay, PD, soft kill, and hard kill. So this one is very important, and there was actually a good discussion going on the Steam community chats about this as of recently, where people, a lot of the time will say, um, it's OP or it's, underpowered, which is just funny because it happens a lot in Nebulous where people swing one way or the other really hard because they don't understand the full picture. So, like this says up here, this is not your only line of defense or even your most important line of defense, it's your last resort. So, jamming and radar are going to be your best and first lines of defense. That's just plain and simple right there. So let's jump down to the bottom. You're going to want both soft kill and hard kill, which is layering of your defenses. Soft kill is going to be your jamming and radar. Hard kill is going to be something that is hard and punches the missile and destroys it. So your first layer of defense is your radar, or your scouts, or your fleet anchor or command and control ship. You need to be able to see the missiles or the missile carriers. That being said, you also need to do anti-jamming techniques, which is going to be your scouting, trying to find those jamming vessels and kill them, or use an illuminator or using your burn through sweep to try to see through the jam. Then the next one is going to be your jamming capabilities. So jamming your missiles or the missile carriers before they become a decent threat, and you can maybe move out of the way while jamming them, or you can just simply confuse them while and then it'll help the rest of your PD take them down. So your next layer of this is going to be long range hard kill. So your Sarissas, Auroras, and Grazers if you're OSP or URF. This is going to start damaging missiles at long range. Sarissas are great at killing most missiles in 1 or 2 shots. I think the exception to that is going to be S4 missiles in the UNSC one because they're super beefy. But generally speaking, Sarissas are great at long range, but you don't want just any one of these layers in your fleet. You want to have all of these. So that's where the next stage comes in, medium range hard kill. Flak, RPF cannons, grape shot cannons, and anti-missile missiles. Most AMMs are going to be size 1s, or in the case of the UNSC, size 0s, which are actually kind of very short range. But building them out to make sure that they're taking on the right targets is key there. Does anyone want a quick demonstration of how to build an anti-missile missile?
I mean, I can also just post some of the ones that I have that are very effective because I am part of the cult of the AMM that yells
Good.
at people to just build them more.
Yeah, we have a couple starter fleets that have a few as well, but you can post them in the fleets discussion section as well. That would be great. But generally speaking,
If I remember right, these are ones made by MathBlob, and they're quite funny.
Nice. So here's just an example of a basic S1. Let's go. Let's go direct guidance for this one, and we're going to go defensive. So this one is going to show you what the threat size you want to target with them is when you switch to defensive. You can go 1, 2, or 3. With size 1s, maybe you just want to go after 1s and 2s, and if you build a size 2 AMM, you can have it just target size 3s, for example. So green is going to be what you want to target, red is what you don't want to target. And then you can have it prioritize what to look at. So you can go descend or ascend. So if these are S1s and you want it to go after S1s first, then S2s, that's what it'll prioritize. And this will be the size of your salvo when you go and shoot one. So it's, fire set when, yeah, the PD missile is set to defer to the doctrine, which can be overridden in battle. So you can always manually target different size salvos as well and change that. Distance priority is going to be near to far or far to near. Pretty self-explanatory right there. Launch type, I typically, for my size 0s at least, I go hot because when missiles are coming at you, you're not really worried about getting, every inch of distance off of your fuel like you do when you do cold launch. You're going to want that going really fast.
So
Yes.
typically, every single defensive missile is going to be hot launch.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you're doing, it should be hot launch because it needs to be going as fast as possible to be able to intercept threats.
Mm-hmm.
Cold launch is just not good for AMMs.
Yeah. Next, you don't need to squeeze your fuel out of that for anything. In terms of terminal maneuvers, you don't want to be generally don't want to have anything. You want to go straight towards the target and prefer minimum angle, so you're just going right towards the target as fast as you can. So that is the basic of an AMM right there. And then finally you have your short range, which are your defenders, Pavis, and then in terms of shooting at them, chaff, flares, active decoys, and then if you do get hit, DC teams. Obviously you don't want to get to DC teams as you know, as much as possible, but chances are you're going to get hit. So you want to build all of these into your fleet. Each ship doesn't have to have all 4 of the, or 5 of these, but your whole fleet should have all of these together. Or if you're splitting into different squads, when you're like playing control, you want to make sure you have as much of this covered as possible, so that you don't get a small group that only has, you know, say radar and long range, or just jamming and short range. You want to be able to have a good layer of all of these in your whole fleet. Questions on this? Great. Okay, so short range weapons in combat. So this is typically 0 to 4,000 meters, or yards if you're an American. So this is going to be your small cannons, 100s for URF and OSP, 120s for UNSC ANS. So small ship defense, very fast firing, limited armor penetration, but can help wear down armor on bigger ships over time. Medium cannons, 250s. These are kind of the bread and butter of a lot of people. They're good for punching up or down. The RPF is great at taking out smaller vessels and shredding them slowly, you know, over time, as well as the AP and HE are good at hitting larger vessels and wearing down their armor and doing damage to them over time. And it's great for both 120s and 250s. HE are good at damaging external mounts and wearing down armor, so that it's good at softening up PD when you're shooting at someone before you try to launch a missile volley. Heavy cannons, 450s plus the URF and OSP 600s, are good for taking down large ships like cruisers or battleships. You can use AP or HE in terms of both of these. I haven't specifically tested out the bomb blast of the 600s. That, I believe, is meant for smaller ships.
600 overall is very ineffective against larger ships because of how its warhead actually works. It is extremely good at taking out stuff smaller than itself, though.
With
Like
the explosive
light
ones?
cruisers. Yeah, the explosive is better against light cruisers than it is against heavy cruisers and battleships.
Yeah.
It's how its damage actually works. It doesn't break DT on larger ships typically
So it's not good at
because they
wearing the
change
armor
it
down?
No, its damage is actually 4 different instances of damage that are much smaller. So it doesn't break damage thresholds on large ships at all.
But cruisers it can, just not the heavier armored
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Are we
Good to
talking
know.
about the Hesh shell?
Yeah, Hesh. It's
yeah.
basically like a mini HEI shell. It's weird.
Gotcha. Well, it's good to know. Like I said, I've barely messed with this. Same with Darg. We mainly stick into the 450s and the other stuff there, so it's really good to know. So 600s then, that's good. It's good for smaller ships and cruisers. 450s, if you use the RPF, you can get smaller ships, but even then it's still pretty slow. But that's going to be great for taking out cruisers or battleships over time. If you get, 10 to 20 450s on you. What was that?
Doesn't 450 not have RPF right now?
That's a great question. I know in one of the updates it was back and forth, right? Let's go and look. That is a great question.
I'm pretty sure it does not have RPF at the moment. I usually play light cruisers, so I don't check very often.
No, that's a great question. Again, one thing is I am not an expert. That's why I had an expert help me build this. A couple experts. Okay, HE and AP, good to know. I think back in the day there was RPF, but they must have gotten rid of it at some point.
Yeah, it was really broken, if I remember right.
Yeah, because I remember playing that as ANS was HE. It was the 450 RPF on my bigger ships. Well, good to know. I will move. I'm glad you clarified that, because a lot of these updates faster than I can count. Cool. So just HE and AP. So again, larger ships. If you feel 450s coming at you, your ship's going to feel it pretty quickly. You can't take a ton of them, generally speaking, at least in terms of UNSC. So HE versus AP versus RPF and Grape. High explosive, like we mentioned before, thinly armored ships, or wearing down someone else's bigger armor, or taking out external mounts. AP, good for getting through armor and going straight to the internal components. less overall damage, but it penetrates more armor. RPF is going to be dealing damage to fast-moving targets, corvettes, scouts, frigates, and missiles. Again, it's decent but not great for missile defense. It's good to add in with other layers of missile defense, but should not be your only focus there. And then size 1 missiles, or in this case also size 0 when we're talking about Halo as well. Smaller warhead, shorter range, and generally used en masse to kind of get through point defenses, or small groups of ships, or solo ships with little no PD, like scouts or jamming ships, or even radar frigates and stuff like that. Questions or clarifications on short range? Good.
There's also beams at short range for ANS, which you have to be very careful of.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because beams aren't in the Halo one, so I totally we didn't even bring that in. But yeah, beams are good for close range. I know a lot of people hate beams, but they're good at
They
ambushing.
oh
I
my
say
god,
hate
they're
being hit
so
by
much
them, I
better
should
now.
clarify. Yeah.
Yeah, they hate getting hit, but they're actually really good right now because they actually fixed the controller on them and they actually hit their target now, which
Yes,
is
the last update was much better, yeah. Because there were so many times you would
Actually,
turn it on and still miss, even though you were targeting or locking.
yeah.
actually, Cold, it's only marginally better now.
I didn't see any void fairies when I was playing earlier today, so
You're lucky.
it was. I am, yeah.
No, great clarification there. Thank you. Okay, so long range weapons, this is going to be 4,000 to 10 or 12. So you're going to be being mobile, kind of position or think of yourself as fire maneuvering like a sniper. You're going to be taking a couple shots from one position and then moving to a slightly different position. Over time, you're going to want to make sure you're just not no one wants to stay in one place. That's the gist of it. So 450 600s, great for long range shots on large ships or small groups of large ships to wear them down. And then again, also small ships are using a lock or the timed fuse. Rails are going to be good in large volleys. For those of you who are around for the first initial release of Nebulous, the rails were fantastic. But then they got nerfed more and more over time. So now it's really the rails and the rail blocks for the OSP/URF. They're good over time, but they're not. You can't have one ship control a battlefield. You need essentially several to help wear down the enemy. And you
They
definitely.
actually were. They
Yeah.
were recently bug fixed, so they actually no longer do half damage unintentionally.
Good.
Also, S3s are a close range weapon, not a long range weapon.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because you can go beyond 4,000, right?
Not. Those are very long range. Typically, they are a melee weapon that you bludgeon people to death with, using command guidance and decoys and corkscrew, and you just kill anybody who gets within like 4,000 or 5,000. They are a melee range weapon, typically.
Yeah, like if you go beyond that range, you might as well fire an S2 because that's how small your warhead's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yes, but you can also do hybrids though for vanilla, right? Which can get pretty long range.
Yeah. Oh, hybrids
Well,
yeah, those are different.
that's hybrid is an S3H weapon.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean
hybrids
size 3
are-
in general. So would it be being a cluster, be a torpedo, being a hybrid? Yeah, you can
I
get
know.
well beyond that if you want to.
Yeah, just the
But
torpedoes
torpedoes
themselves
are definitely close range, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Torpedoes 100% are close range ambush, big explosive. These things I've been wrecked by these close range S3s with a big HE.
I love
before.
Torpecello.
Yeah.
Torpecello.
Absolutely. Good clarification there. As for rails, again, these are going to be wearing down your enemy. For vanilla, it's not generally speaking going to be the deciding blow, but it's going to be part of another layer of your combat attack there. But you're not going to be able to one-shot someone with a rail.
Unless it is a mass driver against anything smaller than a heavy cruiser, and then it will one-shot weapons and non-reinforced components.
Yes, individual weapons. You can't one-shot a ship with a rail.
Not really, but a salvo from 2 mass driver liners can typically gray out about half of a CL if the CL is unlucky.
Yes, which is why, yeah, they're saying use them in mass and large volleys. That's how
Yeah.
rails are best used. And then again, S3s we just went over, and those long range hybrids, and including clusters, you can get beyond. You can generally go to about 6 to 8,000 if you push it, including with the cluster missiles as well. But yeah, if you want to go torpedoes, they're a whole different story. That's completely short range. It's a good
Mm.
clarification there.